Good evening, my fellow photographers. We have spent our previous conversations in the Make Photos Great Again Virtual Photo Club's critique series discussing language, the words we choose, and standard, the measuring stick by which we judge. And now we arrive at the third and perhaps most important element of our critiquing framework: practice. Because critique, much like photography itself, cannot truly be learned from theory alone. One may read every article ever written on composition. One may memorize every rule. One may even become rather dramatic while discussing contrast over dessert. But critique is learned through use, by looking carefully, by asking questions, by noticing patterns, by speaking aloud what we think we see, and then discovering every now and then that we missed the mark entirely. Which incidentally is not failure, it is progress. The eye sharpens through repetition with intention, the more naturally we begin to understand both photographs and photographers. How does one go about practicing this critically important skill? There are three marvelous places to begin, and each teaches something a little different. First, critique your own work. This is the safest and often the most revealing place to start, because you already know the assignment. You know what you hoped the image would communicate. You know what drew your eye. You know what you were chasing. And that gives you something powerful, a direct comparison between intent and result. Ask yourself, what did I want viewers to feel? Where does the eye land first? Does the composition support that? What feels strong? What feels uncertain? Is there something distracting? Would another crop strengthen it? Would another angle? Would a different edit change the impact? And perhaps most importantly, if I photographed this again tomorrow, what would I try differently? Self-critique teaches honesty and patience, because we begin noticing patterns in our own work. Perhaps we crop too loosely. Perhaps we favor one perspective. Perhaps we hesitate when a bolder composition would help, and gradually we stop merely taking photographs. We begin understanding why we make the choices we make. That is valuable, and conveniently requires no committee. Second, critique images online. This is one of the most useful ways to train the eye, and wonderfully accessible. There are endless galleries, club submissions, competitions, portfolios, exhibitions, a tremendous classroom. Pause on an image, resist scrolling, stay with it, ask, why did this catch my eye? What do I notice first? What visual choices support the image? Light, color, timing, subject placement, mood? Would I frame it differently? What creates emotional impact? What makes this memorable? And something important happens. Patterns begin to emerge. You start recognizing recurring strengths. You notice how photographers solve visual problems differently. You begin connecting choices with outcomes. And over time, your own photographic instincts become stronger. Because critique is not simply judging, it is learning to recognize visual decisions and understand their effect, a very practical education, and one can enjoy it in slippers. Third, critique fellow photographers. Now here we enter the richest and most rewarding practice, and also the one requiring the greatest care. Because critique is offered, not imposed. A thoughtful critique depends on something essential, the willingness of the photographer to receive it. If someone has not asked, do not assume they want critique. Even excellent feedback can feel unwelcome if it arrives uninvited. Far better to ask. You might say, would you be open to feedback? Or, I'm practicing critique skills. Would you mind if I worked through one of your images with you? That small invitation changes everything. Now critique becomes collaboration, a conversation, a shared learning experience, and once invited, approach with curiosity. Ask, what were you hoping to communicate? What drew you to this subject? Were you aiming for mood, story, impact? Is this for a competition, a portfolio, a client, or simply personal enjoyment. Then speak specifically, point to choices, describe what is working, offer observations, suggest possibilities, avoid pronouncements, avoid turning preferences into laws. The goal is not to sound brilliant. The goal is to help another photographer see options they may not have noticed. And often, they will help you see things you missed as well. That exchange is invaluable, a wonderful practice ground, and one of the best gifts photographers can give each other. And with that, let us practice. Take a quiet moment with this image. What is your first impression? What genre? What choices do you notice? What strengthens the image? What might you refine? Pause the video now and make your notes. Photo example. 1. Rusty accommodations. Here we have rusty accommodations, a marvelous study in age and texture. What strikes me first is character. The surfaces feel earned. The rust is not merely deterioration, it becomes pattern. Repetition creates rhythm, and the textures invite a slower examination. A thoughtful critique might sound like this. The textures here are wonderfully rich, and the repeating forms create visual rhythm. There's a real sense of character and history. I might explore whether a slightly tighter crop could intensify the texture even more, but the mood and detail are excellent. Specific, constructive, helpful, an invitation. Now consider this second offering. What is your first impression? What genre? What choices do you notice? What strengthens the image? What might you refine? Pause the video now and make your notes. Photo example 2. Pie in the sky. Now, Pie in the Sky, an image with immediate personality, and a title that deserves appreciation. This photograph succeeds because the idea lands clearly. Concept photography asks a lot. It must communicate quickly, and this one does. A critique might say, "This feels playful and memorable." The concept reads immediately, which is harder than it looks. The visual arrangement supports the idea very well. I'd only consider whether simplifying one element might strengthen clarity even further, but the creativity here is delightful. Celebrate success, then refine. Both matter. Lastly, consider this image. What is your first impression? What genre? What choices do you notice? What strengthens the image? What might you refine? Pause the video now and make your notes. Photo example 3. Boogie border at sandy beach. And finally, movement, color, energy, a lively frame. The timing feels natural. The colors feel vibrant. There is motion here, and motion is never easy. A critique could sound like, "The energy in this image works beautifully. The movement feels immediate, and the color brings life to the scene. There's a real sense of action." I might explore emphasizing the subject just a touch more, but the vitality here is terrific. And there again, observe, assess, refine. One final note. A critic must remain teachable. Interpretation is personal. Another viewer may notice something we missed. The photographer may reveal an intention we misunderstood. And suddenly, what looked uncertain becomes intentional. That is not defeat. That is education. Every correction sharpens the eye. Every surprise expands understanding. A humble critic grows quickly. An inflexible one merely repeats himself. And so we conclude. Language gives us words, standard gives us context, and practice teaches the eye what those things truly mean. The more you critique, the more you see. The more you see, the stronger your critiques and your photographs become. Until next time, my friends, look carefully, speak kindly, ask permission when offering critique, and never underestimate the extraordinary power of seeing well.